Of this lady, Deva Sorbel, coming to Athens State University. Dr. Bill Wilkes has an amazing idea to add clocks to the Athens State Library. That's pretty neat.
It is, and the reason why I'm interested in having the collection with her coming is because she has written a book called Longitude, which is a story about the development of the ship's clock in the 1700s, and that was a very important technological development that allowed navigation at sea without risk of running aground, and it allowed trade to be opened up. And she's coming to talk about a different book, but I just wanted to use this as a reason to show my marine chronometers.
Now, what we're about to do is step back here and show off some amazing, what did you call them?
Marine chronometers.
Marine chronometers.
Chronometers.
It's even hard for me to say this, but when you see this, Dr. Wilkes, this is amazing. These are most from your personal collection.
Yes.
And the history behind them go all the way back. The oldest one that you have here is from
1805. This one down here. It was developed about 30 years after the first marine chronometer was built.
Okay.
And I've had to do a lot of restoration on this one.
A lot of hard work and sweat went into these. Now, to make these so important, you told us that one person's job was to, in fact, wind these up. They're, 1 day, 2 day, 8 day?
Right.
And only that was a very, very high-level job for this one individual, but what did they use these clocks for? What made them so important?
Okay, these were used to navigate. It was always easy to find the longitude, the north-south position of the ship, but the east-west, they couldn't do it using shooting stars at nighttime. They had to have something like an accurate time to know the difference between where they were at high noon and the time at Greenwich. So they would set these clocks at Greenwich Mean Time and keep them wound all the time because these were important. I mean, this was the way they navigated the ships. And you're right, one person had the responsibility. The clocks were locked up. Only one person had the key, and once a day, basically, they would come wind the clocks. And they had to keep them going all the time because if they ran down, they would really be in trouble because they wouldn't know what time it was.
Jamie and I were talking last night about doing this story and talking about how important this is. And when you hear people talk about NASA, I think, oh, well, what does it matter if somebody can walk on the moon, or how important is NASA? Well, today's world, if you have an iPhone or a GPS, that's as important as it is today. This is what this meant to them then.
Right. Yeah, without these, they couldn't navigate. They just didn't know where they were, and they might run aground on a reef or in anything. But you're right, now we use GPS. We know within 20 feet or so where we are. But these were the best that they had then, and they were obviously nowhere nearly as accurate, but they were sufficiently accurate to do the job that they were asked to do.
Very important, and what history you have here, too. And if you ever catch Dr. Wilkes out, I know he wouldn't mind sharing some of these stories in more length. But you said they not only had just one on a ship, they had 3.
Yeah, the big ships had 3, because if you had just one, you didn't have the faith that it was keeping the right time, and of course if it stopped you were in really trouble. But if they had 2, then, and they showed different times, you didn't know which one was correct, so they had 3. So they would take the best 2 out of 3 as far as what the time was.
Well, you think, boy, was time that important then?
Well, it was, because of navigation. And without
things
this,
to do and ships to get places and everything.
Well, and I mean,
Great.
it allowed Britain to become the ruler of the 7 seas.
Okay.
It allowed Britain to become the major power that she was during that time.
Well, that is absolutely great. And come down here to the Athens State Library to check it out. There's also another section on the other side we're going to go to in just a moment. But get down here and talk to Dr. Wilkes. You'll be glad you did. And we're now on the other side of the counter where Dr. Wilkes is going to explain this section. And there's a big difference in this section.
Yeah, the other section was British chronometers. And on this section we have chronometers from other parts of the world, the United States, Switzerland, and Russia. And so it's interesting to compare and contrast the two types of the different kinds of chronometers that were made in the world. And what is really interesting is this one down here, which is made by the Hamilton Watch Company, and these were produced during World War II. And they did a magnificent job of mass producing these. They produced about 550 of these in a month, where previously most chronometer makers would make 20 or 30 in a month. Plus they solved some technical problems. And these were they're outstanding chronometers. And they also made a ship's watch, which is in the other box right here, which is equally good in keeping time. Now, in order to develop the chronometer that we're looking at here, they gave Hamilton and Elgin Watch Company a Ulysses Norden chronometer, which is one right here that's made in Switzerland. They said, all right, use that to basically duplicate. And both Hamilton and Elgin were successful, but Hamilton won the contract.
And I understand there were a lot of politics in there, too. The pretty part of the chronometers are the inside, though.
Absolutely.
I mean, because that actually is pretty. So you have one in a freestanding box here, so you can actually see inside.
Well, yeah, these two chronometers up here are actually Russian chronometers. They're modern, made about 1970. And what's interesting is when Russia occupied Eastern Germany after the war, they captured the chronometer factory, and they just moved it to Russia and kept making chronometers as the Germans did. And this, as you can see in the acrylic case here, is the actual mechanism, which, as Gloria just said, is that's the beautiful part of it.
It is actually pretty.
Yeah, and very, very well made. I love the British chronometers. A lot of them were signed on the back, so they would be engraved with a maker's name and London. So this gives us an idea of what they look like.
So how many libraries can you find these in?
Yes, exactly. And that's the #1 question. How amazing this is for Limestone County, for Athens State University to have this here.
I would be willing to bet that this is the only library in the United States with this extensive of a display, probably a display chronometer, period. Now, in a place like Harvard or Yale, you would find a museum that would have nice instruments in it, but this is, I would say, is unique in the United States.
Well, Dr. Wilkes, you have done something amazing here for Limestone County, and I just want to thank you, because anyone who's interested in time or history, you need to come down here and check all this out, because it really is quite interesting.
Well, it's nice to be able to share my passion.
Well, thank you very much. We enjoyed our time with you today.
Okay, well, thank you.
All right.
Okay.